reading an article, and it was talking Buchecha, Marcus Buchecha Almeida, ADCC champ, world champion jiu-jitsu, one of the best grapplers of his era, was talking about jiu-jitsu matches not being very fun, being kind of boring. So he said that, quote, let's change all the black belt matches to 6-minute matches and help the sport get better and make it fun to watch again. And so he's talking about making the sport more exciting for the average person to watch. Now, this is something that I've been saying for years, but I don't have quite the accolades that Buchecha does, nor do I have that nice Brazilian Portuguese accent to get people to listen to me, right? So nobody listens to me, but I've been saying this for years because as someone that's competed in competitions from 6 to 10 to 20 minutes to no time limit, I can tell you that you prepare for them differently because with a 6-minute match, you can just go. I mean, for me, 6 minutes, I can just go. Anybody that's in decent shape, 6 minutes, you can just really get after it. Whereas with 10 minutes, 20 minutes or longer, you have to make a decision in those matches. You have to say, you know what? I don't have a full gas tank, especially if you're doing multiple matches in a competition. I don't have a full gas tank for this amount of time, so I either have to go really hard after it in the beginning and possibly run the risk of running out of steam towards the end and then allow the person to beat me or get the better of me, and hopefully my advantage is good if that happens, or I need to play more conservatively in the front end and then at the very end start coming alive. And if you watch most longer matches, most people do the latter. They conserve their energy and then they come alive towards the end. I remember just recently going to the Nogi Worlds and there were a lot of good competitors. And I noticed though that I was drawn to watching the Masters divisions and the purple belts and some of the brown belts more often than I was watching the higher level black belts. And it was because the black belts were playing very conservatively on the front end and they would typically come alive towards the end. Now there are exceptions to this rule, but that was generally what was going on. Whereas some of these younger competitors and by younger I mean less experienced because some of them were older, they're in the Masters division. Some of these guys were in these other divisions and they had shorter matches, and they were just getting after it. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about for the sheer excitement of the sport and making it more palatable for people to watch. And it's not just for more people that are not into the sport. Here's an interesting thing. A lot of people in jiu-jitsu don't care about the sport of jiu-jitsu. They don't even get interested in it. They love rolling, and they'll watch matches sometimes, but they don't even care to watch it. They're bored by it. That tells you something. Like I could go into an average gym. I can tell you that from my gym. I could talk to many of my students and I could say, hey, name 5 world champions from last year. Or name name all of the ADCC champions from the previous ADCC championships. Some of them are really hardcore geeks into jiu-jitsu and they'll tell me. Many of them be like, I know a couple guys maybe. They might be able to give me a couple that they find exciting. But more than likely they can't. Now, I can ask those same people about questions about MMA and say who were the MMA champions in the UFC or, basketball, football, anything like that. Like they can give me names of all that stuff and they can tell me all kinds of facts and everything else. So it's just not a good spectator sport as it stands right now. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, it just is. Now, some of us like me, I'm a geek about it. I love the sport and I get into it. But I think if you were trying to make it more palatable and exciting to the average person, even in jiu-jitsu, shortening the rounds would be a good idea. If you were trying to. Now, by the way, you could participate on that exercise. Can you name like 5 world champions that won this past year? Can you name all the ADCC champions that won last year or the last time? What about the UFC or some other sport? Can you name some stuff? Again, it just might let you know about, again, what you think about competitions as well. Now, if you were asking me, which you're not, but I'm going to tell you anyway, if you were trying to make matches, jiu-jitsu matches more exciting, if I was running a tournament, and I might at some point, I'm sure I probably will, here will be 3 of the things that'll be implemented. 1, shorter time limits. I think it's a good idea. 6, maybe 7 minutes. It doesn't have to be crazy short, but I think 6 to 7 minutes is plenty of time to get your work in. I've heard people say it's not enough time to work, but I don't believe that. I love competing in 6-minute matches because I get to get after it, and me and the person can just go. Now, something else that I think you would need to implement with those tournaments is stand-up rules, basically bringing things back to neutral. Wrestling has it, judo has it, you have it in MMA. Basically, when we get tangled up into a position where there's no action, stand back up, we're starting in neutral. And I think this would be really helpful because there are some matches that I think would be amazing matches, but they end up in a bad position. I remember one match in particular. It is one of the most forgettable matches that I cannot forget. 2013, I'm at the Pans. I'm excited. It's my first time ever being at the Pans. And I was sitting down eating popcorn, just waiting to watch all the big black belt matches, right? It was the big time where the black belts were there. The place is roaring. It's exciting. The energy there is electric. It's great. So I'm sitting there watching two world champions. Both of them world champions are getting ready. They're coming out to the mat. So you're like, okay, 2 world champions. This is about to be a match. This is going to be a great one to watch, right? Well, instead, they get caught in 50-50, and they just sort of teeter-totter and leg scissor for the rest of the match, about almost 2/3 of the match, and that was it. It was decided on a ref's decision. It was terrible. That's a terrible way to finish a championship. It was really anticlimactic, and I think if they would have been able to split up and get back to neutral, it would have been better, because when you get caught in that position, again, 50-50 is a great leg locking platform in no-gi, but in the gi with no heel hooks, it's not all that. It can be useful if you know how to use it, but a lot of times it just turns into this leg scissoring thing and nobody gets an advantage. But there wasn't really an easy out for either one of them, and so they just stayed tangled up. So a neutral call would have been helpful in that situation. And the last thing that I think would be really useful would be to be liberal with calls on stalling. Jiu-jitsu is very stingy with their stalling calls, even when they're necessary. I've had opponents run away from me in matches. I'm like chasing them down, and they're literally doing this, backing up the whole time. And I look at the ref like, are you going to do something? I can't play jiu-jitsu if the person runs away from me. We have to engage. And you see in jiu-jitsu, a lot of times the stalling calls, they take forever to really push through. There's a few positions that are exceptions, like where if the person's butt scooting and the person backs up, they may give a stalling call. But on the feet, you can literally run away sometimes, and they'll just kind of sit there and look at you. And so I think you got to be more strict with your stalling calls. You got to basically tell the competitors, you can't run. You got to sit here in the front of this mat, and we got to get after it. And I think it would be important. And you can look at other sports for precedents on these, like wrestling, for instance. Wrestling began with no time limit. You're just going till someone gets pinned. The very first Olympic match, Olympic championships, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe it went so long that they ran out of daylight, and so the next day they had to finish the match. And I think the longest wrestling match that they have, I saw this, and I still can't believe it, but I saw it, said it was 11 hours. And I think the guy's name was Martin Klein from Estonia, won the match. I'm like, 11 hours? I'm like, what are you doing for 11 hours? I mean, I couldn't, physical activity for 11 hours? That's nuts. And so, obviously, that's a problem. If anybody wants to watch that sport, nobody's going to watch anything for 11 hours. And so they shortened the time limits, obviously, at some point, and they started adding different types of rules. And wrestling, they've done everything from like point scoring, where you can't see the points, and using paddles to signify who won, kind of like a UFC system, to the points that we're used to now, where you can see them. And so they've gone through this. And I think it's something where with jiu-jitsu, if we wanted to, again, we don't have to. And I'm interested to see what you guys think. If we want our sport to be more palatable to both the people that are practicing jiu-jitsu, because it's interesting to me that more jiu-jitsu people aren't even interested in the sport. And then also, if we want it to be more palatable to the wide mainstream audience of people who might be interested in UFC stuff and they see this jiu-jitsu stuff, they're like, oh, what's this? And then, they can actually digest it and be interesting. So, again, let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Do you think it would be a better idea to have shorter durations of matches? Do you think it would be more exciting for the competitors? Do you think it would be more exciting for the people? I can tell you again, for me, going back to it, I like shorter matches anyway. It's one of the reasons why I like the Masters divisions. It has nothing to do with the young guys versus old guys. It has to do with the fact that 6 minutes, I can go for 6 minutes wide open. I can't do that with 10-minute matches. Or do you think that it would be better to give the higher skilled people more and more time, so then you start getting into 10 minutes, 20 minutes? What do you think would be a better option? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll chat with you guys a bit. And that's the video. So, guys, I'll talk to you next time.